Well, who doesn't like a messy legal drama, especially when it involves Marvel Studios? Let's take a couple minutes to talk about the whole Nicepool legal battle, and while Marvel Studios appears to be doing everything they could do to avoid being dragged into it, and it seems like it's to avoid spoiling Deadpool's future. We all want to know when the Mark with the Mouth is going to return, and Marvel's trying to keep it secret. Well, sometimes this legal wrangling is pretty interesting, and due to full disclosure of the legal process, well, we find out details that ordinarily would not be available. Now, as many of you know, following what would be called creative differences on the set of It Ends With Us, Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds' wife, had a feud with co-star Justin Baldoni, and this ultimately led to multiple lawsuits being filed. Now, these things are quite the mess, and basically is a back and forth of charges and countercharges, but it basically boils down to Lively accusing Baldoni of harassment and retaliation, only for Baldoni to counter by saying Ryan Reynolds defamed him in Deadpool. Now, Reynolds got pulled into the lawsuit along with Deadpool and Wolverine, and this was because Baldoni's lawyer argued that the character known as Nicepool was actually created by Reynolds to mock and bully him as part of what they're calling a targeted smear campaign. Now, in the suit, they say, and I quote, Reynolds portrayed Nicepool as a vicious caricature of a woke feminist before concluding the character's arc with his violent shooting death at the hands of Ladypool, a character voiced by Blake Lively. They went on to claim that it, quote, intended to be a transparent and mocking portrayal of Reynolds' warped perception of Baldoni. Now, Baldoni says that those Nicepool scenes were shot in January of 2024, not long after an ambush at Lively and Reynolds' apartment, which saw Reynolds allegedly berate the actor and filmmaker, demanding he apologize for things that he claims never happened. So how does this bring in Marvel Studios? Well, the whole thing is likely to go to trial next year, and Baldoni's team wants to learn more about the making of Deadpool and Wolverine. But it seems like Disney is definitely not ready to play ball and basically wants no parts of this. Now, the studio's counsel actually wrote earlier this week, quote, the requested documents are particularly sensitive because they relate to development of a character in an ongoing movie franchise. Marvel has built the success of the MCU in a large part by interconnecting storylines, plots, and characters across its titles, including crossover events and sequels. Whether and how such elements will appear in upcoming unreleased projects is the subject of much public interest, and this information is closely guarded by Marvel. Now, the short version of all this is Marvel has plans for Deadpool or Wolverine, and they don't want to release these documents because they don't want to give anybody a preview of what the future holds. Now, given how important surprise is to some of these projects, this absolutely makes a lot of sense. And quite honestly, in a lawsuit of this nature that has a lot of he said, she said, there's basically no upside for Disney or Marvel Studios in the process. Now, it also makes a lot of sense because, quite honestly, I'm almost 100% sure Ryan Reynolds has agreed to some sort of future appearances, and any insight into that and the creative process could make it very difficult for those working on the projects to keep this under wraps. Now, what it ultimately boils down to, though, is whether the judge will care one way or another. Obviously, the legal process is really steered by the judge in the case, and this particular judge may or may not really care about Marvel's secrets and future plans. Now, at this point, the whole thing is pretty much bogged down in the legal process, and we're all sitting back and waiting to see how it goes. Depending on how far this civil case goes, Marvel Studios and the Deadpool and Wolverine project could ultimately be dragged into what will definitely be a lengthy, complicated court battle. Even if this happens, it might take so long that it ultimately doesn't matter. Many people suspect Deadpool could be part of Doomsday or Secret Wars. I highly think this is going to happen, and he could very well appear in some post-Secret Wars projects as a supporting character, something Reynolds has pointed to several times. Additionally, we've heard Reynolds is working on some sort of ensemble movie, maybe a rework of X-Force, and these are the kind of details that Marvel would definitely want to keep under wraps, and having it revealed in the discovery process during some sort of legal battle would surely undermine their plans for the character, the marketing, and everything that really makes some of these things a high-profile deal. Now, this isn't the typical story we usually follow, but we're going to keep a close eye on it. And until we know more, I am really curious on what you guys think of the whole thing. I haven't been following it closely, and I don't know the ins and outs, but I do find it curious Marvel Studios is pushing back so hard and doesn't want to play ball. So tell me what you think in the comments below. Now, before you take off though, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button and ring the bell for all the updates. We do daily videos and we want to be your place for all the Marvel and DC news, but we're going to bring it to you truthfully and transparently so you're really in the know.